Welcome everybody, it is the second day of the Skilling Open as part of the Champions Chess Tour. This tournament is 16 players, and we're currently in the single round robin phase. The top 8 will then qualify to the playoffs for a first place prize of $30,000. All the big names are there. Let's get going. Every game is with a timestamp on the video player if you just want to jump around, and there's a fun Magnus Carlsen game at the end. Today was full of blunders. That's all I have to say. So the first round, we have Alireza, who begins with e4, e5 against Timur Rajabov, and a 4 knights. And at this point, there's a lot of options that white can play, and FIROUZJA plays one that, at first glance, doesn't look like it makes any sense, and that's h3. This is one way to break the symmetry. The problem with this move is that it's maybe a little bit too creative, and after bishop b4, Alireza continues to be creative with bishop d3, and after d6, he continues to be creative with knight e2. Yeah, look, he's trying to play c3, bring his bishop back, and then fight for the center with d4, but this is just a little bit too much. And I have to say, in this case, that I don't love it. Somebody during the live broadcast was like, you just wait, Alireza's going to win this game and you're going to call him a genius. Well, let's see if I'm going to have to call him a genius. Castles, castles, rook e8. Timur is just playing principal chess. Finally, FIROUZJA goes like this. But here, Timur doesn't go with a bishop. He actually comes up with a very genius idea himself. d5. And if you take with the bishop, then I go here. I'm forking you. I'm continuing to open up the position. And you've just damaged your structure on the queen side. So after e d5, he then develops his queen, bringing a new piece into the game. And that attacks the bishop. The bishop moves back. And now he goes e4. So he's just leaving this here and continuing to improve his position. What Timur is doing here with d5 takes every move that he's playing, knight e1, forcing FIROUZJA to retreat. This is called the initiative. I have a video on the initiative. An initiative is a sequence of moves that create threats that don't overextend your position, and they make your opponent retreat and worsen their position. And now, and only now, does Timur go back. d4, and now the en passant rule, e d3, knight d3, and bishop f5. So, we're 13 moves into the game. One guy has developed his queen, both bishops, both knights. He's got a rook, and he's going to bring the second rook to d8, not to e8. And one guy, I don't know, one guy's like playing in the sandbox or something. So now we get knight f4, just queen c4, not taking. When you have a lead in development like this, there is no need to simplify. Okay, and he plays like this, bishop b3, and he just brings his queen back. This position might look completely okay, but it's borderline lost for white because 2 moves need to be played to hit the knight and remove the important defenders of white's position. And white will just mow you down with these 2 rooks down the center. So FIROUZJA goes knight b4, still not getting his bishop into the game. Take, take. I know I said a move ago, why trade when you're up in development? Well, that's because now you play rook d8. That's the difference, is that now you're threatening just devastation. FIROUZJA plays queen f3, losing a pawn. And, well, here he can just develop naturally with something like bishop e3 and lose slowly. Instead, he goes insane with bishop takes f7, king f7, queen b3. This does look on the surface like it wins back the bishop, but after bishop e6, there's a big problem. If queen takes b4, look at this. Queen takes f1 check. I think he must have missed this. What a gorgeous move. And this sort of shows you why his position is so strong. Watch. If king takes f1, rook d1 check, and if you come out, bishop g4, double, check, and mate. It's mate. Every single square the king can go to, since it's double check, you can't just block a double check, is covered. And yes, you don't have to do that. You can play queen e1, but then rather than taking, I'm going to play bishop c4 check, and I'm going to hit you with both rooks. In the game, we got bishop e6, and he took, played a move, and then after bishop e7, just resigned because he's down a knight. 20 moves, and FIROUZJA goes down with the white pieces, something that I just simply did not expect. Timur was, he had a very good start to the second day of the tournament, but more on that later. Another game that I'm going to show you from the first round is the game between Hikaru and LIEM. This one was just a fascinating game that ultimately ended with 1 move. But we will take a look at the game nonetheless. We got a 4 knights English, so a 4 knights just like the other game, but this time not e4, but c4. Very still standard play. d5, breaking in the center. Take. Nothing crazy. This knight retreating back voluntarily here, even though it's not in danger. This is what the GMs are doing nowadays. Basically to avoid this trade so that your queen has to come out. Now that this bishop is here, they'll voluntarily move their knight. Because they're GMs. They do stuff we don't always fully understand. And a3 b4. Taking space on the queen side. Very common for the English opening. When you play c4 and you've got this bishop on the diagonal, it's very common to then do something like this. Rook e8, d3, bishop f8. And it's also very common for black to kind of shuffle a little bit, since there's nothing really too dangerous going on in the center of the board. Bring your rook to defend the pawn. Here, Hikaru played the first very strange move. It's not a bad move, it's just strange. Rook e1. Like, you would play a move like this if there was an open file, or if you were trying to move this pawn. But then he played, well, a5, he doesn't trade, he plays b5, but then he plays knight d2. So another peculiar move, like, if you're not going to move this pawn, why play rook e1, right? But it's preparation, and it becomes obvious later. We get a4 here, trying to fight for the b3 square. And now rook b1. So rook e1, rook b1. What are these GMs doing? Like, why are they so high rated? What are you and I not understanding about these games? Rook e1, rook b1. Rooks don't look like they're going anywhere. Rook a7, this move I can explain. The bishop is hitting this pawn, and you wanted to move this bishop out. So you play rook a7, defending. e3 hits the knight goes back. Knight f3 and knight g5. Like this. Now take, and bishop to b2. And bishop to e6. Now white plays the move knight e4. The knight on e4 hits the queen. Queen goes back to d8, and now Hikaru plays a very nice idea, f4. Looks a little bit strange. This is kind of a weird move. Like, why would you push a pawn in front of your king? Doesn't it weaken the king? Yeah, but it opens up your bishop toward black's king, and black doesn't really have any way to put you under any danger here. So we get f5, counter-attacking the knight, and knight g5, hitting this bishop. Here LIEM plays bishop a2, which is a really funny move, and it's justified because after rook a1, bishop b3, the bishop forces the rook to the corner, but here Hikaru could have played queen h5, and that threatens mate. So if h6, absolutely beautiful computer suggestion, just gross, disregarding the knight, disregarding the rook, and bishop h3, and this is why. If you take, there's queen f7. If you take the knight, I play here, and you cannot stop me from just getting to h7. You just can't stop me. If you take my rook, for example, I mate you with check. Here, check. Very common idea to prevent your king from escaping. Check. I call this the boomerang technique. Because you go, and then you come back a little bit. And then you cover the escape. This wasn't completely winning, but and black doesn't necessarily have to lose immediately. He can try to defend, but it's very unpleasant. In the game, Hikaru did play rook a1, and he did this out of practicality, just maybe, I mean, to spot this bishop h3 idea is ridiculous, that's why we use computers. And then he played knight back to f3. ef4, gf4, and rook a5. So now LIEM is saying, hello, how are you going to defend this? Okay, knight d4, bishop back to f7, kick out the queen. And the queen's not taking, by the way. It looks like a free pawn. The queen's not taking because there's a very nasty idea here. c5. And yes, you can take en passant, but two pawns disappear when that happens, and then you would lose your queen. Kind of crazy, right? Two pawns can disappear on a horizontal rank in one turn, and then you can open up the queen. If the knight moves, then you take the pawn, and black is getting counterplay. So we got knight d5, and it got crazy. We got rook takes b5, LIEM sacrificing a rook to get the bishop, and here Hikaru thought he was simply winning with bishop d5, knight c7. Hitting the bishop and the rook. And LIEM uncorked a nasty haymaker here, a move that just looks completely impossible, and the game is over in one move. Rook takes e3. Shocker. Shocker. If you take it, this is mate. The queen and the bishop are covering g2, and if you take like this, queen c1. Queen c1 is check, the knight is hanging, and this is just lost. So Hikaru takes, sacrifices the queen, but LIEM is winning because of the two pawns on the queen side. So we get queen d7, king f2, b5, b4, b3, and he can sacrifice. and it doesn't really matter because the queen and the pawn are just too strong. And a few moves later, on move 46, Hikaru resigned because the pawn is just promoting and the pawns are just completely cut off. Like, the pawns are cutting off the rook, the queen is cutting off the pieces, and this is over. I haven't featured LIEM, I don't think, so I figured I would show a nice tactic that he played. Rook takes e3, very nice move. And we're going to move on to an interesting matchup here in the third game between Rajabov and Aranyan. And what's interesting about this, if you aren't following global politics, not to get deeply into this, but Armenia and Azerbaijan are obviously having a very serious armed conflict. Different nations getting involved. Both of these gentlemen have a lot of pride in their home countries. They are not, you know, they didn't move anywhere. They are fully loyal to the country that they grew up in and were born in. And they both are very active on social media. Aronian has said that he would join the army if he had to. Rajabov frequently posts, you know, things like the territory that they're fighting over belongs to Azerbaijan. And I just wonder if is there you know, anything that plays into this. They never say anything about each other, but they're very pro their own country. And, you know, we don't have to get crazy in the comments, but I'm interested to see what happens in this game. So we get a Queen's Gambit, Bishop f4 variation, Castles e3. It's a very, very standard, simple line. a3. Rajabov wants to build up on this side of the board, and Aronian lets him with c6. But then Bishop e2. And basically, Black is waiting for you to move this bishop once to force you to move it a second time. And saying, I got you. But at what cost? At what cost? Aronian plays this b5, a6 and wants to go c5. So b4 from Rajabov. Clamp. a5. Rook b1, take, take. Okay, still very solid. Bishop b7. Queen c2, delaying castling. Rajabov chooses not to castle. Knight b6, e4. Oh my. Oh my, we're not castling. Knight c4, bishop comes back to c1 to protect against knight a3. It's the beauty of these GMs. They can go forward and backward. Knight d7, e5, kaboom. Opening up. f5. En passant, and here I have truly no idea why Levon did not play knight f6. Just defending his pawn. If white goes knight g5, selfishly looking ahead, then let's not forget that the knight used to guard something, and after queen takes d4, you are in serious trouble. Because I'm going to just hit everything in f2. So bishop f6 was played, giving up h7, and the bishop just came back. Now Aranyan starts striking back in the center with e5. Rajabov keeps the center closed with d5. Take, take, queen c8. Here, Aranyan had a chance to fight back with rook c8. But queen c8 allows this queen to move over, knight comes back to d6, and knight to g5. Uh-oh. Who is actually getting mated here? And Aranyan here just has nothing. Just knight g5. Very nice move. If bishop g5, I don't even take. Queen h5 is GG. So he has to sacrifice his queen. Rook c1, bishop g5. It's a queen for two pieces. Rook d1, take, take. Knight f6. Queen g6. Nice idea, because if takes, there was a pin. We get bishop d5 and queen g5. This is kind of a spiteful thing here from Aranyan. He's just not letting Rajabov castle. But Rajabov finds a way. Plays rook c3 and goes in with the rook anyway. Rook a1 doesn't even matter because g7 is a mate. Rook g8, queen h4. Knight has to come back to h7. And finally, king d2. If I can't castle, so be it. My king is going to fight. Rook moves to d8. Rook to c1. Allowing the move of the bishop with the discovered check. But what are you going to win? It's a light squared bishop. And all of white's pieces are on dark squares. Bishop c4 check. King e1. Rook d4, queen e7. Check. King moves. You can continue to give checks, but the king is just going to run over here. Knight f6. Rook c3, and finally, the final piece of the puzzle. Rook e2, rook h3, and the final touch. Rook takes h7. King h7, queen h4. And Levon Aranyan resigned to Timur Rajabov after a very nice rook takes h7. Nice game by Rajabov, just not castling at all. Understanding the position quite well, despite having a king stuck in the center of the board. In the next game, I want to show a game by Vidit. Vidit is having a difficult tournament. He really is. And he was scrambling for a win, looking for a win. And he was playing MVL. And, of course, MVL plays the Grunfeld defense. The players busted out the most insane theory ever. e4, take, take, bishop g7, bishop e3, c5. undermining the center. Knight f3, queen a5, going for this pawn, queen d2, castles, rook c1, bishop g4, d5 in the center, b5. Black sacrifices a pawn, but opens up the c file. Bishop to b4, queen drops back, knight d4, now a5. Leaving this pawn unpre, this bishop under attack, b4. This is all prep. All prep. Bishop b2, queen b6, bishop b5. What does this move even do? This is what prep is so crazy. Look at this. You would think here that bishop takes d4 just removes the guard of this, but look at this. Here, look at how savage this is. c4 hits the queen and mate. That's the whole point of White's idea here with the move bishop to b5. So he plays e5 MVL and take, and c4 anyway. This locks the bishop in, delaying the movement of the knight, rook d8, and now rather than moving the rook at all, he counterattacks with c5, both queens are hanging, and yet after take, isn't this just a free piece? Not so fast. We get rook to c8, king f7, rook c7 check, king f8, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is the most savage thing I have ever seen. The rook just goes. Like, White is not even castled, he hasn't moved his king or his rook at all, and he just goes. And you can't take. Because if you take, the pawn is threatening to take and push. And that's it. I mean, you're just making a queen. So MVL has to play rook b1, take the rook. And in this position, Vidit, the savage, doesn't even take the rook. He plays f4. Because he says, I can take this later. I'd rather play e5 and lock out your bishop. So rook c1 and finally say, okay, I gotta take now rook c8. e5, g5, g3. Let's box in that dark squared bishop. Take, bishop coming to h6, king coming to f3, king g7. Rook a7 check, king goes back to g8, rook c7. Trying the same thing. Well, MVL's not biting. Rook c4, bishop to g5. That's kind of a funny move. You actually can't take this thing because of the pin here. So, king g4, bishop rotates back to d8 to hit this pawn. b7, pawn is not going anywhere, bishop b6. The rodeo of this bishop is really something else. Rook c8, of course, trying to go for the same thing. King g7, and here Vidit missed his big opportunity. He could have played bishop to f3, bishop to c4, going for this pawn. And in this position, it's all but impossible to defend this e6 pawn. There's some crazy variations. For example, if bishop to e3, you walk straight into the fire. If bishop takes pawn, rook takes rook, and king takes bishop. If rook takes pawn, king takes bishop. If the bishop just moves away, then you take rook f4 and king e2, and you fork this and this. Just an absolutely absurd position. Maybe Vidit missed something. Maybe he thought there was some h5, king f3, and then the bishop can like do something. But bishop c4 was his big opportunity, and instead he played king f3 like without bishop c4, and he wasn't able to break through. MVL just created an impenetrable fortress. And this happened. And the difference here is that, let's say you try to play bishop c4 in this position. I can play rook f7. That is the slight difference, is that now I've defended my knight. That's it. It's just the fact that I defended my knight. A move ago, before all of this repetition, my knight was not guarded, so I couldn't move my rook up. But by putting the bishop on a7, MVL understood that was his way out. Yeah, Vidit played a completely insane game, and this is the only draw of the entire video. I just wanted to show it because I have respect for Vidit. I know there's a lot of fans from India who want to see his games, and he's just been having a rough tournament, but he plays exciting and interesting chess. And I just wanted to show one of his games. The last round featured Hikaru versus NEPO, and then a Magnus Carlsen game, which I will show. Hikaru versus NEPO, this game was just the weirdest thing ever. So it began with a Najdorf, an open Sicilian defense, knight f6, knight c3, a6. Hikaru plays bishop d3. This is actually his sneaky pet line, not a popular move, like the 15th most popular move in this position or something like that. And so far so good, yeah? So far so good. Guys are developing, you know, you can't take this because bishop h7, and they plays g6, c4, knight d7, a3, knight c5. Okay, now Nepo plays b5. And in this position, Hikaru plays a move, b4, which Nepo must have just missed. This knight has nowhere to go. If you move it to a4, it gets taken. If you move it to d7, there's the beautiful c5 breakthrough. Well, it's a nice pawn play lesson. If this pawn gets to c6, the game is lost for black. Defended past pawn. If you take, little breakthrough here with d6, GG. Bishop is trapped. So, Nepo goes back to b5, putting his horse in a prison, because now it cannot move anywhere at all. We get bishop h6, rook e8, and bishop d3, and nothing can guard this pawn. If you play something like queen d7, I'm going to play queen e2. Good luck. Who's going to guard b5? So Nepo plays knight takes d5, hoping for bishop b5, knight c3. A little bit of a fork here. And instead, the game is lost after queen f3. The most basic of x-rays. I said it was like the weirdest game ever. Maybe it was the fact that it was 1 in the morning in Russia when this game is getting played, or 2 in the morning or something. A lot of these guys over there have to play these games extremely late. But I don't know. And knight c3, then the game is instructive. I mean, still how to clean up a winning position. You guys ask this question a lot in comments. He brings the bishop back to hit the knight. His queen gets out, doesn't get trapped. After knight e4, take. The bishop is hanging, so you play rook d1. You don't play knight takes e4, because then black will play f5. And it's still winning with very precise play, but I don't want you guys to end up in these kinds of positions where 2 pieces are hanging. So f5, bishop c3. And this is an instructive moment to put all your pieces on their best squares and then go from there. Now it's time. Queen b3 check. King to h8, rook flies in. Bishop b6, the second rook joins the party. Now, this beautiful rerouting idea, the bishop is biting into nothing, so we're going to try to get to g7. Rook b8, bishop e3. This is the backup idea. We're not going to make it there because rook g8 or rook e7, so we trade black's active piece. f4 not possible. h5 though, this is what I would recommend to do if you're losing by a piece. Belligerently attack your opponent's king, but Hikaru too strong, and after f4 take. He sees through the illusion. This attack is only optically dangerous, but it's not, because you can just take. A gorgeous move. Why? Not because you check, because you take the rook. And if you take back, it's ladder checkmate on the back rank. You can block and you can block, but you will lose. Such a savage idea. Knight takes f4. Rook f8. Nepo goes for one final trick. If knight takes e6, it's never too late. Queen f2. Queen f1. A very famous checkmate pattern. Do your tactics, kids. This is Nepo at his sneakiest. Rook to f8, but that doesn't happen. We get queen e6. Queen b6 covering this, and after h3, queen d4. And rook c6. Nice idea. Pinned rook to the king. Get this guy. Nepo resigned. Crazy last round. And now, my friends, we move to the game of Magnus Carlsen. I saved the best for last. I always feature a game of his, and, well, he's got the black pieces here. Versus Sergei Karyakin. They played a world championship match against each other in 2016. This one was a Philidor defense by Magnus Carlsen. Something that, God, I have no idea when the last time he played. d4. Take, natural development, and g3, bishop g2 is a cool line against the Philidor. And here's why it's cool, because after all these moves, white continues very naturally with a developing move. Psych! White goes g4. You gonna play the Philidor against me, Magnus? You don't respect me, Magnus? Time to put the beats on this man. g4, let's see what Magnus plays. Knight c5, rook e1, c6. Common ideas, just trying to fight for the center. Alright, g5. I'm loving it. Knight d7, f4, why not? Let's get another piece. Same side attacking here, a5, bishop e3, queen c7, a4. Important move by Karyakin to suppress any b5. Knight goes to a6, queen comes up. Knight comes back to c5, a different knight, rook d1. Karyakin attacking on the king side, suppressing the play on the queen side, centralizing all of his pieces. We got bishop d7, we got knight e2. Where's this knight going? You about to find out. Knight g3. I served my purpose, time to go over to the king side. King h2. Nice move to improve the position of the king. I mean, I would have liked to see, I'd like to see f5 here, but he plays this. And now Magnus says, I've had about enough of your nonsense. Let me strike back in the center with d5. If you take, the position opens up like crazy. The c file, the knight jumps in, the bishop's the rook. So we get e5. If you want to attack someone, you need to close the center. I've said this like so many times, but in case you haven't heard it, close the center. Knight before. What's that even attacking, bro? Queen f2. I'll show you a threat. B6, bishop d4, centralizing, defending, and we're ready. Magnus says, don't go to f5. Okay, says, all right, rook e2, no problem. I'm going to guard my c2 pawn. g6, and now I'm going to take. If you take with a pawn, you've got double pawns, a very unpleasant position. If you take with a queen, Magnus, you've only got one way back. h4, and I got a guy who's got something to say. About you trying to escape. Magnus says, all right. You know, I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me. Knight e6. My queen doesn't need an escape. Rook f1, c5, bishop e3. Magnus firing, coming at him. We get bishop h3, taking the bishop, counterattacking the queen, and queen to g3. And this queen has no escape. Queen c2, sacrificing, f5. Rook d2 check, king h1. Does Magnus need a queen to win this game? Bishop f5, e2. Pawn's about to promote. Take, take. Take, take. And the finishing touch on a combination. Chef's kiss. Look at that. That rook is delicate, and f7 is coming, and the rook can't get back. It's not on the right file. Rook e7, take the rook. Knight d4, queen c4. Queen b5 going for the b6 pawn. Winning the b6 pawn. Magnus trying to twirl around with the horse. Queen b8. Bishop can't move anymore. Rook comes forward. Rook also comes forward. The queen, beautiful. Hits here. Hits here. Magnus says, all right, I'm going to go get this pawn. h5. c4. Queen d4. Down another pawn. 2 pawns remain to help the queen. Karyakin is only up 1 point of material. Queen c4, knight c5. But g6. That's all he needed. Queen is too powerful. hg, knight e6. And now a nice little thing here. Queen d5. You can't take this pawn because the knight is hanging. a4. Queen f5. Knight d8. And now queen to d7. You cannot guard your knight. You can't move it because then I take this. And rather than playing this on, Magnus Carlsen in this position resigned the game to Sergei Karyakin. Stunning game. Beautiful game from Karyakin from start to finish. Well, it's not, I mean, it's pretty rare we see Magnus lose. In fact, he hasn't lost in this event except for the mouse slip. At the end of the second day, these are our standings. 6.5 points for Anish Giri. 3 people with 6. 3 people with 5.5. 3 people with 5. 3 people with 4.5. And 3 people with less than that. The top 8, my friends, will make it to a playoff. Tomorrow, we have day 3. If you're like 6 months into the future at this point, go check out that video if you want to see the recap. And if you're watching on November 23rd or 24th, 2020, coverage every day, 10 a.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Eastern, 10:30 Pacific, 10:30 in the evening over in India, over on Twitch. I'll see you in the next one.